Hey y'all, welcome to Tears and Joy in Your 20s. I'm your host, Julia Light, and I am so glad you're here. Navigating your 20s comes with a lot of highs and lows, a lot of freedom, and a lot of uncertainty. That's why I created a space for conversation about all of it. On this podcast, you'll hear interviews of creatives, entrepreneurs, people doing big things in their 20s telling their story, tears and joy and all. I hope this helps you know you're not alone. There's so much to look forward to, and you can savor this season right in the messy middle. Hey y'all, welcome back to Tears and Joy in Your 20s. I'm so excited to introduce today's guest, Anna Miriam Brown. Anna is absolutely incredible. She's in her early 20s. She is an author and a composer, and she had a musical that she wrote as a teenager be produced by a Broadway producer and director when she was 22 years old. Literally insane. She's awesome. She's very humble, and we talk a lot today about the creative process, about dealing with disappointment, highs and lows in your early 20s, and really creating from a place of being loved rather than trying to kind of gain love by creating, which has kind of become a theme in these first few episodes. And I'm pretty excited about that. So I'm really excited to share this interview. Also, to preface, this is our first remote recording episode because Anna doesn't live here in New York, but we'll have many future in studio episodes as well. So don't you worry. On this podcast, we just want people to share their authentic stories. For Anna, that includes writing musicals based on the Bible, and her faith is such an integral part of her journey, and it's so beautiful. But I just want you to know, as a listener, no matter your faith background, where you're at with that, you're so more than welcome here all the time, and we love you. And I'm just so glad you're here. So let's listen to Anna's story. All right, everyone, welcome to Tears and Joy in Your 20s. I am so excited today to have the one and only Anna Miriam Brown on the podcast. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yay, I'm so glad you're here. Okay, so Anna, are you 23 years old?
Yes, I'm 23.
Okay, I'm also 23, which is fun. But
Ooh.
yeah, you have done a lot in your 23 years. I just want to hear your story. Can you tell us, like, how did you get into writing, songwriting, creating musicals, and what has that looked like so far?
When I was really young, just like my whole childhood, I've always been creative. I've always loved like storytelling and making up skits and plays and like drawing pictures and like specifically like designing characters and costumes. But I am dyslexic, and so like I wanted nothing to do with actually writing words. And my mom's a curriculum designer and like a homeschool she makes like homeschooling books and stuff like
Mm.
that. And so when she started seeing signs of dyslexia on me, like just like completely, like I could not understand words, like I couldn't read, couldn't write
Mm.
until I was almost 10.
Wow.
So that was pretty hard for her, but she saw my creativity and really felt from God that I was supposed to be able to write and I was supposed to be able to read. And so she prayed that God would show her what to do. And she she says she kind of got this vision, this idea for something that we now call dyslexia games. She sells it now, but it's like basically this program where it teaches the creative side of the brain to recognize letters as art. And it's like you do all these patterns and stuff. And so when I was like 9, she started making all these little pattern workbooks for me, and I started doing that. And then like within 2 months, like I could just read and write like normal. Like
Oh
it
my goodness.
just kind of nuts.
Wait, that's
So
so cool. And now
it's
that
like so cool.
curriculum's out for other
Yeah,
kids
so
with
now
dyslexia.
now she sells that curriculum, and like
That's amazing.
literally thousands and thousands of kids have had the same experience where like they do it and then 2 months later they can just read and write. And it just like clears up all the brain fog around like reading and writing.
Oh
So,
my
that's kind of where my
goodness.
story starts.
Wow.
Um, so when I was 9, I learned how to read, and then I loved graphic novels. I loved comics. I loved anything that had like words and pictures because I was still
Yeah.
very like very visual.
Yeah.
And then when I was 12, my whole family, which I have a big family by the way, now we're at 15 kids. Um, yeah, a
So
lot.
many.
Yeah, so many. 5 are adopted from Ukraine, 10 are biological,
Wow.
and I love it so much,
That's
like,
so awesome. And where do you rank in the
I'm the
the
oldest girl, so 2nd oldest kid.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know that. Wait, that's
Yeah,
so cool.
yeah, it's so much
Wow.
fun. I just love it so much. But anyway, when I was 12, my whole family moved overseas. So we moved to Italy to be volunteer missionaries, kind of work with a Bible college, and I think that was so important for just my creativity and just like the way I see the world now, just growing up in so many different cultures, seeing so
Yeah.
much different art. And so my family traveled around Europe for like 8 years. And when we were
Mm.
in Ukraine, um, I've kind of I really came to God when I was around 16 after a lot of um, just like I had a lot of anxiety and depression growing up, but
Mm.
when I really, really found like a close relationship with God at 16, all of that healed for me. I mean, it's not
Wow.
like this for everyone, but like it really changed where I just became so much different than I was before
Mm.
and so peaceful, so joyful, and I knew that I wanted to spend my life kind of being a missionary like my parents. I wasn't sure what that was going to look like, but I knew that I just wanted to tell the story of Jesus for the rest of my life. So
Wow.
so in Ukraine, I was just like volunteering. I was just like working at orphanages, just doing whatever I could at 16, 17. And I was still I wasn't doing much songwriting. Like I wrote a couple like just like little melodies and sometimes would write poems, but that wasn't like a huge part of who I was. I was still doing art a lot, like drawing and stuff.
Mhm.
Um, but when I was almost 17, I went on a mission trip to Kenya and I met this girl there and she showed me the musical Hamilton. And when I heard it, I was charmed. I was like, "What
Oh,
is this?" Like I didn't even know what Broadway was. I didn't know like
really?
growing up on the mission field, I just
Well, yeah, you weren't in the US,
yeah.
yeah.
We didn't know anything about like American pop culture, anything. We just kind of were in our own bubble. So when
Yeah.
I heard Hamilton, I was like, "What
What is
is
this?
this?"
And
I
it
didn't
was
even
new for Broadway, like, that was
yeah,
there hadn't been much like that before anyway.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was an audio musical, I didn't know it was an actual stage thing. So,
Oh.
like, that kind of concept of creating audio musicals, like, that's kind of the dream that started because I
Whoa.
I didn't know it was like
You
a
didn't
stage
even
show.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like,
That's so
"Audio
cool.
musicals are so cool," like and
Oh.
and the way I could just, like, listen to the story and experience it, like,
The whole
by
thing.
myself and just, like, imagine the whole thing was
Oh,
super fun for me, and anyway, I got obsessed with Hamilton. I that kind of led to, like, a really strong interest in, like, American history and just, like and everything in the musical and the story and the characters, and I just, like, felt it so deep, and I felt really connected with it,
mm,
and that's kind of where the idea came for his story, which is the first musical I've written,
mhm.
and I was kinda like, "God, like, what if somebody could do this with the Bible? What if, like, I could create something that could help people become interested in God and interested in the story of Jesus?"
Mhm.
And I actually started writing a musical about Esther first, Queen Esther. And,
Oh.
um, and I'm writing that musical again. I finally picked it up after, like, 7
Cool.
but I started writing that, and then God just spoke to me one day, like, so clearly, I just, like, felt it, and God, said, like, "I want you to tell the story of Jesus first, like, that should be your
Mm.
foundation." So I was like, "Okay." I started writing his story, and I I can't even explain how it happened, but it just the piano started making sense to me. I hadn't really played before, but
Wow.
I kinda would just, like, put my hands on it and listen for something that sounded right, and I kind of just taught myself piano, and I really felt like God would just lead my hands into, creating all
Wow.
these chord progressions and everything, and then the songs just started happening, and then about a year later, I had a whole, like, 30 something song musical called His
Wow.
Story, and God just started bringing all these connections together to have it produced. We were still living in Ukraine at the time, but we went to Poland to produce it, to, like, make all the music.
Just,
And
like,
then
with your siblings or, like, who
yeah, so
sang?
Like, yeah, with my sister Rachel is kinda like my, partner in all this, like, music and art. She's, like, a really excellent artist. She always paints my covers and illustrates my books and stuff
Mhm.
like that. But we went together to Poland to work with a Polish, Messianic Jewish producer who really
Whoa.
had insight in, like, that kind of music and everything, so there's, like,
Wow.
lots of elements of that in the History album. And we just built this musical and this whole soundtrack and then went to LA to record with singers that we had just found on, like, Instagram. We would literally just, like,
Really?
watch covers of videos until we found, like, "Oh, there that's Matthew," and then we just, like,
Oh my
messaged like, just DM them so unprofessional, like, "Hey, do you wanna audition to be in, like, a audio musical?"
gosh.
And so then eventually we found the cast and, flew them all out to LA, recorded this soundtrack, and then just, like, put it out. And for me, I was like, I just wanted to make an audio musical, so, like, that was kind of the end of it for me, and I moved
Mm.
on, started writing other musicals, started writing Of Ashes and stuff like that. But then, a Broadway producer found it and kinda
Oh.
contacted us and was
Okay.
like, "I want to, help make this real." So then we spent the next COVID happened, but, like, we spent the next 3, 4 years into bringing it to the stage, and
Wow.
eventually we had it in New York as a workshop, and then we moved to, like, Dallas at the Broadway tent in Grandscape and did a
Mhm.
show there for a while, and yeah, so that's kind of how, it all came together for me, and, I just love it, like, I think finding musicals is such an interesting thing. I mean,
Yeah.
such a, like, little niche, but, I
It
just
is,
love
yeah.
it, like, writing
Yeah.
audio.
Okay, what was it like, all of this? I mean, so you're writing to write, and then the Broadway producer approaches you. I didn't know that. That's really cool. And what is it like? Because at that point, you're what, like 20, 21?
Yeah, I
Like,
think I was 19 when it kind of started, uh,
okay.
doing turning it into an actual stage show.
Yeah, that's amazing. How did you feel being so young and having all this official, crazy, large scale art things
Oh,
happening
okay.
with your work?
First of all, it was, like, terrifying at some points because, um, I don't know why, but I've always had a really, really awful anxiety towards, like, any type of public speaking or just, like,
Oh,
professional kind of, like, stuff like that. I don't know, I was homeschooled, so, like, there wasn't much, like, of the opportunity to, like, practice that kind of thing,
yeah.
but going into that and having to, like, do, like, random speeches and, like, talk to all these
Yeah.
very professional people, and, like, I'm just, like, this little 19-year-old and, like, I don't know how to do all that, so
Yeah.
that was definitely, like, very scary, but, in the beginning, I remember just, like, the first time my dad, before it even was, like, gonna be a stage show, our church wanted to do something, and I
Mm.
sang the part of Mary in his story, so I was gonna have to be singing, on stage, and, like, when my dad first told me the idea, I literally just, like, broke down in sobs, and I was like, "I don't wanna do it,
Really?
don't make
Oh
please
my
don't make me
goodness.
do it," and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, like, why do I have to have this hindrance?" Because, like, naturally, I'm not like a nervous person, I feel
Yeah.
pretty, like, confident and, like, just chill, but, like, when it comes to stuff like that, like, I just couldn't control it, and I just would get
Mhm.
super anxious and just, like, kinda break down, but I remember after my dad asked me about that, I kinda went outside and I just prayed, and I was like, "God, like, why do I have this hindrance? Like,
Mm.
what is this all about? Like, it doesn't even feel like me, like, what am I
Yeah.
supposed to do? Like, I don't wanna do this, like, can't I just, like, live a, like, quiet life? Like, I don't, like all that big crazy stuff." Um
Mm.
and I felt like God just brought the story of Moses to my mind
Yeah.
when God asked Moses to, like, help set free the children of Israel, and Moses is like, "I can't speak, like, I don't you I'm not good at that." God, he knows me, he designed me, he has a plan for me, so even despite what I was feeling, I was just like, "Yeah, God, like, I will do this." So I agreed, and it was so crazy because throughout the whole process of his story, I there would always be these things that I would have to do that I was so anxious about, but I would just
Mm.
remember that, like, what God asked me to, and, like, every time I would have one of those experiences, like, I felt like the fear just would more and more start to fall away, and towards
Wow.
the end of the process, like, almost all the anxiety in it was just gone, and I was just like I felt like God used the whole process of His story to just set me free from that weird fear that I didn't even feel like fit me, um,
Yeah.
and, like, towards the end, like, I had to go give this whole speech to this whole press thing, and, like, if I would imagine, like, 4 years back, I would not, like, believe that I would have done that, um,
Wow.
so, like, I definitely saw God work throughout all that, and that was just so precious.
Also, it's cool because you shared that your faith really started to become your own around, like, 16, right?
Yeah.
So that's cool that you kind of had that foundation of those first couple years before
Mhm.
stepping into something. And then even I
Yeah.
wonder too, like, with the writing process, how you felt like it was so inspired by
Mhm.
God and by your faith, like, did that grow your relationship deeper and kind of
Yeah.
set you up for the next thing too?
Oh, definitely. Definitely, and I think the thing with writing that's so cool and so precious is some of my best, most intimate times with God are when I'm, like, brainstorming for something or when I'm writing, and I feel so close to Him as, like, God is creator, like, that's the very
Yeah.
first thing He was to us, so, when we create, like, I think sometimes we can feel so close to Him because it's just like, in the image of God we're
Yeah.
creating and stuff, and so I definitely felt that a lot, and I still do, and it's just so sweet.
And I'm just so glad that you didn't let that fear hold you back or your youth or your, like, how am I going to talk to
Mhm.
these professional people when I'm literally a
Yeah,
teenager or like 20 years old? I'm just so glad that you didn't because
yeah.
like so many people get to enjoy your work now. And
Thank
there's just so
you.
much more coming, I'm sure. Um, can you talk to us about like, I mean, obviously the fear was a big thing to overcome, but other things about just being in your early 20s, like and being even, like, being Gen Z and the weirdness of, like, growing up with social media, I'm sure because you do a really good job sharing your process on social media, but can you talk to us just about anything in that world, like, just being in um, this time of 2024 it is now, and being 23 years old and being a creative, like, what has been unique about your experience because of kind of those factors?
Mhm. Social media definitely, like, for me, it's hard because it can really it can really get in the way of my creative process a lot just
Mm,
because it's always there and it's so busy, and I think it can also get you in the mindset a lot of for me a lot, the what I do, writing and all of that, it starts out as something for God, but I think when social media and all of that becomes a bigger and bigger factor, it makes it more for people, and I can catch myself getting into that mindset a lot, like, so for me, I have to take breaks a lot from social media, so I'll do a
mm,
lot of social media fasts, so I'll,
mm,
like, be on it for a while, and I'll pray, and I'll, like, make these reels and, like, advertise whatever and talk to people and that kinda stuff, but if I ever feel it, like, it starts taking over my life in any way, I'm just like, "Oh, no, done," and then I, like, cut it out and
yeah,
stop doing stuff for a while until I kind of feel stable again, and that's just something I've kind of learned to do, like, right now, I'm in kind of a not really on social media
okay,
super a lot stage, and it's hard, like, in this age, like, everything is going so fast, and there's so much I wanna do and so many expectations for myself, and, I can it's easy for me to get swept away in that, so I have to be really, really careful to keep my mind, focused on God, and,
mhm.
because it's like, there's so much going on. There's so much going on in the world,
Yeah.
so, like, quieting my mind and, being really careful to stay alert and, like, keep the mission, the why, just, like, clear is something I've had to do a lot, but yeah.
Yeah. I think that's so cool because I just started reading Deep Work by Cal Newport. It's just this book about it's actually written like 10 years ago, which is so interesting because he talks about like how Twitter's distracting and all this stuff. I'm like, oh man, if you only knew like where things were going, but he talks about this idea of like deep work for creatives or engineers or all kinds of people is that we need these like long periods of focus
Yeah,
without the distractions, and then I think too for people of faith, it's the same thing. It's like, I'm not
yeah,
gonna be super focused on God if I'm, like, on checking my phone every 5 minutes, and then
yeah.
so it's so cool because for you, yours are so deeply interconnected, your creativity and your faith, that obviously then it would be, like, doubly true. But that's cool because I
Yeah.
think you do a really good job sharing with, like, your reels and stuff like that. I feel like you're getting the word of your work out really well,
Mhm.
so that's cool that you have that balance. Can you talk to us about just what your life looks like now? Like February 2024, like what are you up to and what have you been doing since His Story musical closed and how this like season has been for you post that project being done?
Yes, totally. So, his story, we I work a lot with my sister Rachel, who is she's 20 now, I'm 23. We do a lot of stuff together, and I talked a little bit about this. She's a really, really talented artist, and we do a lot of stuff together. So we've been doing his story together for probably 6 years since it started. Like she's the one that I show my songs to, and then like she does like a lot of sketches, and like we go to all the meetings and everything like that together. And so we moved to Dallas to do his story, and we thought we were going to be there for a long time, but it ended up closing early, and there's just like a lot of stuff kind of went crazy with it, and
Mm,
it was very overwhelming, and it was a lot of it was exhausting for us, and that's
mm,
not something like me and her are both very, like, relaxed and chill, and we like, with our family always moving and always doing different things, we've been good at adapting and just, like, moving on from stuff and whatever, but, there was just so much that happened with his story that we were both, like, maybe for, like, the first time in our life, like, really burnt out, and
mm,
we didn't even know how to really deal with it, and we were like, "Okay, like, what does this mean? Is this gonna, like, mess up our creativity? Like, should we even, like, be writing anymore? Should we even be doing this? Like, should we just, like, find something else to do? Like, maybe we should just, like, move to somewhere and just, like, do mission work, like, our family, or, like, what is
mhm,
our life?" And, like, that was kind of the first time we ever were having to, like, question this stuff,
mm,
and, so, like, right after Dallas, we went back and just, like, lived with our family for a little bit in Indiana, and we're just trying to kind of rest and process everything, but, like, me specifically, like, I had never had to deal with something, like, that big happening, like, it was so
mm,
big, and there were so many people involved, and, like, I had put so much time into it, so to have things, like, not go the way that I thought they were gonna go
mm,
was so was so huge and so, like, shocking and kind of devastating that, like,
yeah,
I didn't even know how to deal with those, like, feelings, and I didn't,
yeah,
like, really want to. I didn't, like, really wanna process it. I was just kinda like, "Okay, let me just do what I always do and just kinda move on." And, but, like, with something that big that I put that much time into it, that was, like, not something that, like, I should have done. Like, I definitely should have taken
mm,
more time to process it, but instead, I, like, took a lot of months to just, like, do random stuff. Like, I went to Italy with my other sister, and I traveled a lot, um, and it was, like, fun and stuff, but there I felt this, like, kind of heaviness building inside of me. I felt it in my relationship with God, I felt it in my
mm,
creative time, and it was just, like, this, I guess, just disappointment that I didn't wanna deal with. And, like, I really trust God, and I've trusted God for a long time, and I never wanted to, like, be the person to be like, "God, like, why did this happen?" Or, like, doubt God or
mhm,
question God. So I kind of just, like, didn't ask questions, and I didn't, like, properly deal with my heart.
mm,
But, like, the last few months, it got specifically, like, specifically bad in the way that, like, I have always, like, when I'm writing something I know is from God, like, it flows really well. Like, I can write a song quickly, and I can, like, write
Mm.
a chapter of a book in a day, and it's just, like, I have this process, and it goes smooth and fast, and I get in the flow.
Yeah.
But, like, specifically this last month in January, like, I had this whole plan to write this series, and, like, I was so excited, and I've been thinking about it for years, but I started writing, and it was like, there's something, like, blocking my creative process, and it was just, like, so difficult, and, like,
Mm.
was just, like, taking so long to do everything, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, God, like, what is going on? Like, what?
Yeah.
I don't feel like this normally. Why am I feeling like this?" I just kind of went on a fast from social media and just all this, and I was just like, "Alright, I'm just gonna, like, take some time to just, like,
Mm.
really try to hear from God and
Mm.
figure out whatever is going on in my head because, like, this
Yeah.
is." And so, I started fasting, and, like, 3 days into it, I just felt like stuff starting to, like, breakthrough starting to happen, but I felt like God asking me to, like, surrender every creative thing that I was doing, every, like, I had the whole plan to write the series, and I felt like God was saying, like, "It's not
Mm.
the time to do that, like, it is from me, but this is not the time, and, like, you know it," and
Wow.
I was just like, "Oh, no," because like,
Oh.
I get really like, restless when I'm not creating or when I'm not doing something that I
Mhm.
think is important. So I was just like, "God, but, like, what am I supposed to do then? Like, what am I supposed to do?"
Yeah.
Because I kinda had, like, this 4-month chunk of time where I was just gonna write, but,
Mm.
I felt like God calling me out of that, and I was so confused, but then eventually I was just like, "Alright, I surrender this, I'm not gonna do this right now," and it was so sweet. All the weird hardness and, just build up from not processing what had happened with his story and just, like, what had
Mhm.
happened over the last year kinda just started to break off, and I started to process that with God and started to ask him
Mm.
questions and really got into, like, reading scripture and just, like, spending hours just, like, listening to worship music and being with Jesus, and in, like, literally a week, I felt like a year's worth of heaviness just, like, coming off me, and
Wow.
creativity starting to come back, and even though, like, creativity was coming back, I still felt like God saying, like, "But don't do anything now. Just, like,
Mm.
rest and rest your mind." This kind of occurred to me, like, the 7th day is always supposed to be the day of rest and the
Mm.
7th year, and, like, in the Old Testament, there's so many it's always like that. It's, like, 7 years of planting and harvest and then a year of, like, barrenness and rest, and,
Mhm.
like, right now is the 7th year of his story existing. And
Whoa.
so, it being a year of barrenness and also rest just makes so much sense,
Oh
and
my
I felt like God
goodness.
was saying, like, "You need to not try to, like, do something now, just rest."
Mm.
And so, that's been my life for the last, like, month, just, like,
Wow.
resting, and then I was living in Arizona when this whole, like, thing happened with the, like, fasting and talking to
Uh-huh.
God. But, like, towards the end of it, I just felt like God saying to come back and stay with my family for a little bit, so, like, a week ago, I called my sister and like, "Hey, can you come pick me up?" So she drove from Indiana to Arizona and came
Oh.
got me, it was so sweet. And so now I've just been with my family and having just such a good time, just, like it's been so good, so restful, so, like, fun, and, so I just feel like I'm in a really good place, and I'm
Yay.
just, like, so thankful. But yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing, and that's crazy about the 7th year thing. Like, that is
Yeah.
so cool to see that literally play out in your life
Yeah.
with the long-term project. That's
Mhm.
amazing.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and just the rest, I feel like as a creative, it can be like, "I have to go, go, go. I have to make this. I'm not" there's such like a external pressure or like internal from ourselves of like, "I have to
Yeah.
make this. I have to meet this deadline," because you want to create excellent, beautiful things and you
Yeah.
just want to continue, but to have, like, a greater call to, like, just rest, just be loved, just, like,
Yeah.
that will come, that will come.
Mhm.
Just it's
Yeah.
okay. I feel like we all need to hear that, especially in our early 20s when it's like,
Oh,
"I have to
yeah.
make the most of this decade and I like, I have to do all this stuff," and,
Yeah.
like, yeah, but also
Yeah.
rest.
It's so
There's
true,
time.
and
Mhm.
there's a Bible verse that says every good and perfect gift comes from the Father of lights, like, who gives it to us, so it's like unless God is giving you something, it's hard to do it on your own. So it's like it's
Mhm.
so much better to just like to be even just like when you are creating, be restful in your spirit, not to be anxious.
Mhm.
I found that just like when you're in that peaceful place with God, that like he is the only thing that's important. He gives you those things and he gives you them in the right time too. And so that's just been something that's so good for me to learn.
Mm, I love that. Okay, Anna, you also just released a new audio musical and graphic novel of Ashes. Can you tell us a little bit about that and kind of how that came to be, where that process was in the place of like his story? Did you just do it? How yeah, tell us everything.
Absolutely. Okay, so I started writing Of Ashes, I think when I was 19 or 20.
Okay.
Um, and it's so interesting because I've always like I've never I didn't grow up writing novels. That was not like I always thought writers were like I don't know, I just was like writing is not like write that kind of writing is not going to be my thing and
Uh-huh.
whatever. But and I cuz I didn't really read normal books ever. Like I
Mm.
would read comic books or like watch movies, but like I never really read books, but when I was I think 19 was kind of when I read my first novel, I guess.
Uh-huh.
But I started reading Francine Rivers, and I
Mm.
love her. I think she's such a talented author, and I started reading her book, Mark of the Lion, and I I love the story so much that I wrote a song for that story. It
Oh.
was is the song "The Problem Is I Love You," but it was for 2 characters in that book, and I was like,
Oh.
"Oh my gosh, I'm gonna write a musical about this story." Anyway, turns out you can't do that legally. You can't write a musical about
Um,
someone else's thing. So I was like, "All right, so what am I gonna do for what am I gonna do with this beautiful song?" And so me and my sister Rachel, we just like went out to our little patio. We were living in Hawaii at the time, and we were just like, "All right, let's think about what we can do." So we were like, "What if we take 2 characters from his story and like put them together and create a backstory?" So we chose the woman caught in adultery and the leper that Jesus heals. And we just kind of started brainstorming, and I I don't know. I think we always kind of had the idea for it to be both a novel and a musical because we were both really into
wow.
novels at the time and musicals. So we were like, what if it's like something that you read a chapter and then you listen to the song or and
That's so cool.
I don't even
Yeah.
know. It's like so random, but we were like, we're gonna do this. So we got those 2 characters and we just like started crafting together this concept of a story, and then I just kind of casually started writing. And this was at the point where his story wasn't even like we had just started talking to a producer, but anyway, the point was there was no stakes, like, there was no pressure because,
Mm.
like, we didn't think we like, we're gonna even do anything. We were just kind of
Yeah.
at this point, we were just writing for fun, so we're like, "Whatever we do, it doesn't matter, like, we're just having
Yeah.
fun." And so we just came up with this big, crazy plot, like, it's so much drama, like, you barely ever
Yeah.
come for air.
I
It's
just
just
listened to it.
like
I was like, "Oh my gosh." Yeah.
one thing after another of like, "Oh my gosh," like, okay. There's, like,
Yeah.
barely any happy moments, but, like, that's just,
But
like
it's great.
that's
Yeah.
the kind of story we were going for. And
Mhm.
so we started writing, and I started, writing songs, and then COVID happened, and I was with my friend Hannah, and she's a writer, and so I was like, "Okay, Hannah, I'm gonna write my first novel. You're gonna write your first novel. Doesn't matter if it's bad. We're just gonna do it." And so every day of quarantine, we wrote one chapter together, and then we'd read it together
Oh,
every day.
that's
And in
great.
like yeah, it was great. And so in like a month and a half, we had both finished the first drafts for our novels, and
Wow.
we were like, "All right, cool." And like there was still no stakes. Like I don't even know if I was planning on publishing it. It was kind of just like whatever. And so then I just like kind of put the novel away for a while, and I just kind of was like every now and then writing songs. And then his story started to become more of a thing, and my parents were like, "Okay, like I showed them some of the songs and they're like, these are really beautiful. Like we'd love to like we kind of like made a whole like little deal. We have this house in Indiana, which is like this kind of creative house.
Oh, wow.
And so it has like a recording studio and stuff, or we kind of set it up during that time. I don't really remember.
Cool.
Um, but we ended up recording another musical, but this time, like the first musical, we did it with the producer in Poland. But literally, praise God, my brother Isaac, my older brother, he learned music production. He's actually been doing it for a long
Oh,
time. But
amazing.
he's like, yeah, it's actually like so
So
practical.
convenient.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So like I'm so thankful to God because like my whole family is creative. My sister does art, my brother does music production, my other
That's
sister
so
does
fun.
photography. And so we're always working together on things. But anyway, he produced all the music for Of Ashes, which is like he's so talented. Like I literally
Wow,
can't believe like,
yeah.
my brother is like one of probably the best producers I've ever heard, and like he's literally my brother, so
Your
it's just
brother.
great.
That's
Yeah, it's like
incredible,
it's just
yeah.
so great, and just like praise
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
So we recorded Of Ashes. We found singers like just watching videos on the internet and like messaging people,
And you brought them
and
to Indiana to record?
yeah, yeah,
That's so
and
fun.
it was so fun, so random, and we decided we were gonna make a whole studio film. So like with a lot of like musical songs, they'll have like in studio videos, but we
Mhm.
decided we were gonna do that for the entire musical and make kind of like a
Whoa.
theatrical studio performance film. So we recorded the whole thing, and now it's on YouTube now. So you
That's
can kind of
amazing.
see, even though it's not a stage show, you can see all the actors still like acting everything out and like
Whoa.
recording everything. So that was
Oh,
super cool.
so cool.
But still, like the stakes were not high. Like we were just like, we're just gonna do this the best we can, and like whatever. And like with the book, like I didn't think it's just crazy because I published the book in I barely had an editor, barely had, like I thought, like, my 3 friends were gonna buy it, and, so, like, I didn't really, like, put too much into it, like, my sister drew a bunch of pictures for it, but, like, I didn't even know how to, like, put the book together, so I just, like, kinda published it, like, whatever. Anyway, it ended up doing really good, and I sold, like, 500 copies in the first, like, couple weeks, and I was like, "Oh,
Oh, that's
no."
amazing.
Like, it was, like, amazing, but I was like, "Oh, no," like, I didn't even put the pictures in, I didn't even, like, think it was gonna do very well, so I, like,
Mm.
was like, "Whatever, I'll just put it out." But, like, even though I didn't it still did really well, even though it was, like,
Yeah.
kinda like that. But anyway, I ended up making, like, another version of it where, like, it's a little better edited, and, like, it also has, like, all my sister's illustrations and,
Oh,
like,
great.
all that kinda stuff, so it's, like, really beautiful, and, like, I'm just I was shocked that, like I don't know, it's like I'm a random person that people have never heard of, and, like, still a bunch of people were buying it, and
Mm.
I'm so shocked, and I'm so, like, grateful, and it's so strange that, like, I don't know, God's giving me this chance to do this, and, um,
Yeah.
so it's just really fun. We published the musical and the book kind of at the same time, so, like,
Yeah.
people listen to the musical and get excited and then get the book, and it was such a fun concept that, like, I kinda think, like, forever now, I wanna do both, like, I wanna do
That's
musicals
really
and books
cool.
together. It's
Yeah.
just, like, random and fun, and I love
Yeah.
it, yeah. So that's kind of Ashes.
Oh, I love it. I just love your creative process. It's so refreshing. You're like, "Yeah, I just wanted to make it, and it's great. The stakes are low." I love that. My one of my friends in New York says that about everything. The stakes are low. Like,
I
just
love that.
remember that. Like, most things, that's true, and you can
Yeah.
just enjoy, and it's, like, so freeing to create from a place of, like, "I'm already loved." Like, "I'm just having
Yeah.
fun. I'm not trying to earn anyone's approval," you know? Like,
Exactly.
you just carry that, and it's so refreshing, Anna. That's amazing.
Aw,
Oh, that's so great. Okay,
sweet.
so you are at the very beginning of your career, even though you've already done a lot of cool stuff. Like, you're so young. What are you looking forward to? What is, like, on the horizon for you in life? Like, it could be a project or just, like, a thing you wanna do. Yeah.
Yeah. I just I'm so grateful to God because I feel like he's given me a calling that I really love. I feel so blessed that he's actually like called me to do something that I enjoy so much.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, as far as I can see, I feel like I'm gonna keep doing this. I have like a whole folder on my notes that's just full of musical ideas, full of book ideas, full of like just so many different things. Something I've really loved lately is like making one-off songs, like little songs
Mm.
that are like a musical within one song kind of thing.
Oh,
And,
cool.
like and working with, like, just people I find on Instagram to record these things. I published one, like, last year called Dear Icarus that's, like, one of my favorite songs. It's, like, about the story of Icarus, and it's just, like, this
Uh-huh.
little song, so I'm making a lot of those, like, Greek mythology and then a lot of, like, little Bible story songs, so I'm having a
Cool.
lot of fun with that. But, like, my big project I'm working on right now is a 20 book series. Like there are little sections in each one. There's like 4 book series within like a whole world kind of thing, which is
Uh-huh.
called Young Apostles, which is the first book starts out with the disciples of Jesus kind of before they met Jesus. And then it's like
Oh.
their kids and their kids and their kids. And it kind of goes through the
Oh,
generations
wow.
of the early church. But it's like, it's very imaginative. It's very like creative, while like I've done like a lot of research and stuff, but it's like adventure and drama and like all this fun stuff. So I'm super excited about that because it's something that's been like on my mind for a little bit. So that's what I'm working
Mm.
on right now, as well as writing um, a musical about the Queen Esther. So yeah,
Cool.
so I think I'll just keep doing this as long
Oh
as
my
God keeps
goodness.
giving me things to write.
Anna, that's awesome. I'm so
Yeah.
excited for you. So excited to see, like, where this journey takes you and just, like, grateful to capture this moment now, because like, who knows what,
Yeah.
life could look like in a year, 2 years, and I just think it's
Hmm.
cool to talk to people who are young because we just don't know, you
Yeah.
know, like, all the things that are in store. It's just exciting. So, thanks
Yeah.
so much for being on the podcast. You're amazing.
So good. I've had such a good time talking to you.
Yay, me too. And friends, you can find Anna. Where can we find you? Instagram?
Instagram is probably best. Anna Miriam Brown on Instagram, and then on YouTube you can watch Of Ashes and
Yes.
that kind of stuff.
Great. Amazing. And then for her books, just Amazon, look up her
Yeah.
name.
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome.
So
Thanks so
cool.
much, Anna.
You're so welcome. Thanks for talking.